We're a little late here, but let's get going with the meeting for the joint public agency to be held today as advertised. And we'll start out with notice of the open meetings law. It is posted in the back of the room, and you all should be aware that we conduct our meeting in accordance with that law. We invite public comment, of course, and on the agenda items, and it's been our custom to give individuals a total of about 5 minutes to speak on specific items. And the only thing we ask is that you identify yourself for the record. Carl Eskridge and Tim Clare. My name is Chris Beitler. The three of us serve as the members of this Joint Public Agencies Board. And so with that, unless Carl or Tim have introductory remarks that they wish to make, we'll move forward.
Okay.
Yep. Good with that? All right. Agenda item number 3 then is the approval of the minutes for the JPA meeting held December 22nd, 2016. Is there a motion on the minutes to approve or otherwise?
So move. Second.
It's been moved to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Beitler,
Yes.
Eskridge.
Yes.
Clare.
Yes.
The minutes are approved. Moving to agenda item number 4, the approval of the December 2016 payment register, which will be briefly reviewed with us by Don Hers, our interim finance officer. Welcome, Don.
Good afternoon. There's a one-page listing of payments in December of 2016, and I'll just briefly highlight a few of these. On the second line item, there's a payment to the City of Lincoln. That amount, if you recall, quarterly we reimburse the city for the staff that work for the JPA, the City Attorney's Office, all the staff, the City Finance Department, and maybe others. So that's the nature of that payment. And then right below that, you'll find substantially all of the payments were the semi-annual debt service payment on all of the outstanding debt. Then there are 3 payments to the Pinnacle Bank Arena for those amounts that are included in the operating budget to reimburse for repair and maintenance items, and the quarterly payments on the operating increment and the sponsorship. You'll see a payment to BKD for $10,000. That is substantially the remainder of the amount for them to do the audit of the West Haymarket JPA, and that audit will be presented at your next board meeting, and at that time it'll be available to the public also. And I think as far as the operating budget, those are the main things I wanted to mention. In the capital or program budget, there are 2 payments to PC Sports in the amount of $17,000. I think those are 2 monthly payments for the prior 2 months. So if there are any questions, I will try to answer them. I'd like your approval if possible.
Quick question for you. At one of our previous meetings, we talked about I think it was when we approved the budget, I believe, where we talked about the dollars being spent with the City of Lincoln for services provided by, say, the City Attorney's
Right.
Office and so on. While I think it's important to the city to be tracking those hours to make sure they're getting compensated fairly, I think at the same time it's important for the JPA to be tracking the hours and what are we exactly getting for in this case, $109,000. What are we getting for that? What value of the services are being performed? And I want to make sure that we're tracking that accurately so that both entities, the city and the JPA, we've got a fiduciary duty to our board, and to the organization, make sure that we're tracking that accurately and paying fair compensation for what is in fact being done for us.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Mark Lycum, who's our, who manages his finances, we just talked about that this morning, actually, about, I think our proposal would be to do a periodic analysis of the time spent by our revenue collection area, the two staff on our side, see if we can get the city attorney's staff to maybe track their time. We're not looking at doing this for the entire year, but doing some sampling and then prorating that there. Then we'd have to cover the benefit side, and probably, as is typical in a law firm, there's an overhead amount. I don't charge my time directly, but I spend a significant amount of time as well as a city attorney. So we'll have to think about a methodology, but I would agree with you that it's probably time that we start doing something like that is a little bit more than just saying here's an FTE and here's an FTE. Is that?
Yeah,
I'd pass that along to your new treasurer when he comes on board next week to make sure that he's going to be in agreement with that. I'm sure he is.
I just think it would be important for both sides, because I think it's, Jeff, you and the city attorney's office and the mayor, you guys are going to want to know that you're getting paid fairly for the work that you're performing. Similarly, I think we got a duty as members of the JPA to make sure that our money's spent wisely.
Well, Jeff Kirkpatrick, counsel for the JPA, I understand where you're coming from. I would say that this is not the only agency that the law department provides service for. For example, I also serve as counsel for the Public Building Commission. But I don't have anybody in my office that keeps track of their hours. I mean, that's one of the advantages of working for the city rather than for a private law firm. If we did track our hours, it would be a change of procedure. One of the things that we do when we come forward with this estimate is we have a smoothing effect. When we were involved in the bridge litigation with Hawkins Construction, that ate up a tremendous amount of time. That's not reflected in what the JPA paid for the legal services. And so I think what you have then going forward is an average of how much time we put into that case, how much time we spend preparing documents for the JPA now and going forward. And so I would say that there were a couple years there that the JPA was getting a heck of a bargain. I do think it is incumbent upon us on a yearly basis to take a look at how much time we've spent. Now, you can look at the meeting today, and there are 4 attorneys here from the law department for different reasons. So there still is a fairly significant commitment that the law department has made to the JPA. But as we look at the construction costs and other things, as the JPA moves out of the building phase and more into more of a maintenance phase, I think it's appropriate to look at our budget and say, should that be lowered? Should that be reduced? I don't know if we would have the same analysis of the finance department, because a lot of the billing statements, a lot of the accounting is not going to change a whole lot as far as the time commitment. But I could certainly see at some point where the law department would be less of a time commitment and less compensation from the JPA.
Well, I appreciate that. I think from your end, you're going to want to make sure that these dollars are covering your department's expenses.
Yes.
So I would think there's some level of expectation, some level of budgeting that goes into determining, are you being paid fairly? Similarly, we have a duty on this board to make sure that the monies are spent wisely and prudently, and to the extent that we're paying this figure, for example, to the city for services provided by the city, we need to make sure that we're actually getting value. I would suggest to my colleagues that I think we need to suggest that, that it's fair. And I'm not disputing the amount. I'm just saying, when we did the budget, we talked about tracking this a little bit more accurately to make sure that what we're paying for, we're in fact getting value for.
Okay.
And I would agree with Jeff. I think the finance department, the revenue collection, the audit function, the controllership function, those are more continual and would be a little bit easier to to do an analysis and prorate it for the entire year. The law department, I would agree, would be a little bit more problematic in that
Unless we're
sense.
involved in some continuing lawsuits, which hopefully won't happen.
Okay, are there other questions of Don? If not, is there a motion to approve the payment register? Oh, I'm sorry, public comment. Please, Jane, come on up.
Yes, I always want to make comment. When you say debt service, do you mean like the interest on the bond? Or exactly what is that?
Yes, most of that is interest only. As you recall, most of the debt that was issued was interest only until 2020, I believe. There is one bond issue, the one in 2013, that has interest and principal. The $550,000 represents principal. We started amortizing that a little bit earlier. So the rest of that is interest only, and we will begin amortizing or paying off the debt here in a few years.
3 years, huh?
Is that about right, Mark? 2020. Starting in 2020. We had 10 years of interest only, followed by a 25-year amortization period.
And we continue to have concerns about the maintenance of the arena. Seems to be exceedingly high.
I guess.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I think Mark has the detail of what that represents. I don't know if the board wants to, I mean, these are basically maintenance contracts that we're paying for. It's not maintenance of the building, but maintenance for the elevator, maintenance contracts for the escalators and things like that to keep the building in where we want it. But we can discuss that further.
Okay.
Thank you, Jane. Is there further public comment? Seeing none, is there a motion with respect to the payment register?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the payment register. Is there further discussion? Call the roll.
Beitler,
Yes,
Eskridge.
Yes.
Claire.
Yes.
it has been approved. Agenda item number 5 is the review of the December 2016 expenditure report. Again, Don Hers will introduce us to that report.
There are 3 reports in your packet. Job cost report for the substantially all of the arena. There's a separate one for the garages, and then the operating expenditure report. I think I can say that I'm comfortable that all of the dollar amounts for the current fiscal year on the operating budget are in line with our budget. And the job cost report, you'll see one line item on the second page that has a negative balance. That's going to be, our plan is to address that with an amendment. I think that's agenda item number 12. So we'll be proposing an amendment to fix that. And otherwise, I think all of the numbers are well in line with our expectations.
You'll be proposing an amendment at what point?
I think it's
On the
agenda,
agenda item down the line?
yeah,
Okay.
number 12.
Hey, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Where are we relative to revenues and receipts from the occupation tax, and where do we sit from a financial standpoint? You talked about the expenses being in line with budget. Where are we at from a revenue standpoint?
I mean, that's the really good news. I think we're averaging about a 6% per annum increase in our occupation tax revenues, and we've only been budgeting, 2%. Obviously, each new budget, then we use the old, whatever we collected in the prior year as our base, and we budget a 2% increase, but that base has been moving up much faster than we had projected. In fact, I think our collections last year, if I'm not mistaken, are about where we expected them to be several years, in 2022 or thereabouts. So I think that's a really good news.
Okay. Thank you, Don. Is there public comment on this particular item? Seeing none, no action is required on this item by the agencies, so we'll move to agenda item number 6, having to do with information being passed, giving the board essentially an opportunity to get further information on a no action letter from the Department of Environmental Quality, which we're looking forward to.
Good news.
Adam?
Good afternoon. Adam Hobel-Heinrich with Project Control. And I'm here to happily report that the West Haymarket Joint Public Agency received a no further action letter from the Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality, also known as NDEQ, on December 29th, 2016. The no further action letter signifies that the JPA has satisfied all commitments of the NDEQ approved remedial action plan for the northern portions of the West Haymarket redevelopment site north, which is essentially everything north of O Street, under NDEQ's voluntary cleanup program. This essentially covers all portions of the West Haymarket redevelopment site north of O Street overpass, areas south of the overpass, former Alter South, and Watson Bricks and Lumber Company are in the process of similarly being closed out. We're working on the reports right now in order to get the no further action letter in those areas. The conditions of the no further action letter require completion of one more semi-annual round of groundwater monitoring along Salt Creek and submission of final groundwater monitoring effort. Annual reporting / certification to the NDEQ that activity and use limitations of the restricted environmental covenants established for the area remain in effect. Those limitations include restricting of specified development, prohibition of use of groundwater as drinking water source, and maintaining an environmental operations and maintenance plan for the area. It should be noted that the no further action letter does not include the limited area of petroleum contamination that we continue to monitor and pump on a monthly basis on the north side of Canopy Loss area. While the levels of petroleum accumulation have generally declined, we are not yet at the level that NDEQ could consider for closure. We are currently evaluating cost-effective alternative methods for accelerating the product removal, but monitoring and pumping will likely continue at least for the following year. Available for questions, but I think that is good news.
Questions of Adam?
Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, it is good news. Thanks, Adam. So just looking at all the JPA land, then you indicated this does not include the land right by the Canopy Lofts.
It includes the land by Canopy Lofts in regards to the voluntary cleanup actions,
Right.
but the difference is the cleanup we're doing just for the petroleum area by Canopy Lofts, that will continue on for a little while longer.
Okay. And then also is pending in terms of kind of the west property.
As far as I know, it's the south property, south of O Street is
Okay.
what's remaining. So,
Okay.
for example, the area that's a parking lot between N and O, that was just always broke out as the south end. So that's on a slower timetable than the north end because last year we just remediated the Alter property. And as of right now, the project's essentially complete. We completed it late in the year so the grass couldn't grow to prevent soil erosion. So that's pretty much the only outstanding item on that project. And then Benish and Olson, as far as our environmental team on that end of things, is working on the report. That report allows us to go to NDEQ and ask for the no further action letter for that area. So that process it's going on right now.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions of Adam? Thank you very much, Adam. Is there any public comment on this?
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs. Is this where the plume is being by Canopy Lofts? Is that what you're talking about?
They're two separate issues. So
Okay.
there's the remedial action plan and getting the no further action for all the operations we did to cap the site, remove
Yeah.
remove the contaminants as directed by NDEQ. That process is complete. The one outstanding item is the diesel plume that is in that area, and we're getting less amounts of diesel every time, but it's just not quite at the level where they can say, you did everything you could do. So they're asking us to do a little more, and that's what we're doing.
So they're still monitoring that plume, though? Is
That
it?
one area, yes. Yep.
Okay. And pumping it out?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
And
So-
that's stationary? Hasn't
Yes.
changed?
Yes. So, yeah, it's actually decreased. The amount we get of fuel every time has decreased. And as NDEQ noted recently, it doesn't pose any public threat, but they want to have us make the efforts we can to reduce the size of that plume and get as much fuel out of the ground as we can, and that's what we're doing.
But it's not, is it reduced?
Yes.
It is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I made that comment that it's generally declining every time we pump it out. There's less that we get.
Okay.
Does there have to be anything done at the federal level with respect to the environmental?
Frank Ularik's more the expert on the environmental side of things, but what my understanding is, and Rick can correct me if I'm wrong, but NDEQ is kind of the EPA's representative, so
That's what I thought, but I
when
wasn't
we
sure.
get NDEQ approval, we in turn get EPA approval.
Gotcha. Okay, good work.
Thank you, Adam. Is there any further public comment on the report? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 7, WH 16-17, a resolution with regard to an endowment agreement. And Jeff, you're going to talk about that a little bit?
I'm going to introduce it, and then there may be some other people that can fill in some of the gaps. Jeff Kirkpatrick, legal counsel for the JPA. The agreement that is before you has been in the works for several months. We had hoped to have it before you on the last meeting, and then there were some additional terms to be worked out. The endowment agreement is pretty similar to endowment agreements we've had with the Parks Foundation for other projects. For example, the airport entryway. Of course, the other party to that was the City of Lincoln rather than the JPA. But you might recall we did a similar endowment with the Hawkins settlement, the litigation arising out of the bridge where we got a settlement from Hawkins Construction. That money, rather than just going into the JPA funds, was put aside into endowment for maintenance. And the purpose of this agreement is to set aside an amount, $2 million, for a similar endowment for the maintenance of the West Haymarket area. And so this is money that was budgeted originally under the original JPA budget for maintenance, but by setting it aside, then it's going to be there and the endowment will be building up. And what I think is envisioned when you think about the maintenance of this area is it's brand new construction at this point. For example, the canopy, the railroad canopy, which was, as you would recall, a relatively expensive and somewhat complicated proposition to take it apart and then refurbish it and put it back up. Well, it should be good for a number of years, but at some point, some additional maintenance is going to be necessary. So it may not be for 20 or 30 years, but at that point, based upon what it took to refurbish it in the first place, it could be a significant sum of money. And so when you look at what this money is going for, and I'll ask Caleb to maybe explain in more detail, but you do have a business improvement district, which is responsible for things like weeding and keeping the streets clean. That's similar to hiring a housekeeper to come in and maybe clean up your house once or twice a month. I don't know what that's like, but I've heard people talk about that. This is more, if you get a hailstorm and you need to fix your roof. I mean, that's for longer term structural problems with the infrastructure. This money will be set aside, and so 20 years from now, when you have a significant infrastructure issue that you need to deal with, hopefully the money will have been building up over those years, and you don't have to look to the JPA money in order to fix it. You've got that money already set aside. So with that, I would answer any questions I can.
Aside money though for some of these maintenance things through our budget? I thought we set money aside.
Well,
for
it
these.
is in the budget, and that's, I think, as I understand it, what we're doing with some of the budgeted money is we're moving into an endowment. So it's set aside off the books.
Maybe the only thing I can add is obviously, once the debt is gone, the JPA no longer exists. And so this money, as I view it, there would be money into perpetuity to deal with those ongoing issues. I suppose up until the time the JPA goes away, there's opportunities to, if the resources are there and the revenues continue to grow as they have, could be addressed there. But there will come a time when the JPA won't be there to fund these maintenance items. And so that's kind of my view.
Okay. And can you explain for me the interplay between DLA, BID, and now this?
And I might turn to Caleb to speak to that in some detail.
There's a lot of confusion out there as to what exactly this will pay for that other things won't pay for. And I'm all in favor of this as far as taking care of what we've put together. But I think it's important, for the business owners that are down there, for the community to know what this money is being used for, different from what DLA pays for, different from what BID pays for.
Caleb Swanson with Project Control. One of the things that we did is we developed what this number might need to be down the road. There was a lot of discussion with entities like DLA, with the Parks Department, with Public Works, to figure out what is being currently taken care of, what a BID does fund, what it doesn't fund, and what that gap was. So DLA, for example, like in the downtown BID area, they'll take care of things, and they assess it on a per foot of frontage, and it's just kind of an averaged figure across a BID. And then that money goes towards things like sidewalk and cleanup, sweeping up, picking up, the cigarette butts out of the alley. There are some monies that can be spent on plant maintenance and watering, maintaining, if there's a leak in an irrigation pipe, or just paying the water bills for those irrigation systems. They can do a little bit in terms of plant replacement, not a lot. So when you look at the West Haymarket, for example, if you look at the intensity of some of the streetscape amenities, such as trees, such as planting beds, the higher level of streetscape amenities, when you take your typical, I'll call it a normal BID assessment rate, it's not able to cover everything in an area like the West Haymarket because of the nicer amenities, because of the unit pavers, because of things like the historic train canopy, things like that just don't fit inside what a typical BID covers. So we sat down with them and figured out, okay, what do you cover already? What will you be covering going forward, and what isn't currently covered? And that delta is what we targeted.
With this endowment.
With this endowment, right. So this endowment, it's not envisioned that this will take the place of DLA cleaning the streets or salting the ramps at your intersections, or pruning the plants, in the spring. What is intended to cover is to say, well, okay, a typical block might have, 2 or 3 trees on it, but on Canopy we have 3 times that tree density, let's say. So there's going to be more trees over time that need replaced on this particular block than might be expected. So this is helping to supplement that. DLA in a typical BID obviously would not have any money to re-roof 2.5 blocks of historical train canopy. That's a significant expense, and it's roofs need replaced. Anybody that has properties knows roofs need replaced. So items like that are what are targeted as part of this. And I don't have the complete breakout.
Did you mention artwork?
One of the items in the list is the harvest sculpture for maintenance of the lighting and things like that. Go through a couple other things here. I don't have my full list that goes over everything that we discussed with them, but
Rick Pale from State Law Department. What I'd point out is the Business Improvement District was created basically for annual type maintenance activities, but also the district was created with a scope of services that would be assessed to the property owners. And you can't just go back and change and expand that list of improvements. Those were specifically what they voted upon, agreed to when they came into the district. So you have limitations on what a BID can do. And so you need additional type of funding source for these more long-term, larger piece type of maintenance obligations.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions?
One
Jeff?
other item I would address, and this is something that Mr. Clare raised as far as the language that seemed to imply that both the JPA board and the mayor would have to approve the annual endowment report. And that was not the intention. I think the thought process was at some point the JPA board would go away, and then that would go to the mayor. Certainly the law department would be comfortable striking through that implication that the mayor would more or less have a veto on the approval, just taking that out. We did check with the person on the foundation board that we were discussing the changes with. He's comfortable with taking that out as well, and I know the foundation has a representative here today that if you had any questions, she could address that. But if that would be an amendment that somebody on the board would like to make, that would certainly meet with the approval of the law department. That would be our recommendation.
Speaking of amendments, while we're there, Jeff, to get the current form of the agreement in front of us, we need to file a motion to amend number 1. Is that right?
I believe so.
To this agreement?
Yes, because this was on the agenda for last month, and since then, we made some changes in the agreement. And so the original introduction, I think, was the original agreement. It's now been changed, so we'd have to amend that. And so I would suggest that that amendment be passed, and then any changes that you want to make to that agreement would be an amendment.
Okay,
To the amendment.
is this motion to amend number 1, is this a motion once the main motion is put before us, or can it be made immediately?
Well, I think that's before you now, and I think you can make the motion to amend at this point.
Okay.
Would be in order.
Okay. I think we haven't allowed for additional public input.
I got
You have another
another question.
question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so again, I'm all in favor of taking care of what we've put together. And that's within the JPA footprint,
Yes.
correct? What does this mean, though, when it says including the public right-of-way and adjacent park property in paragraph 1? Because that seems to be outside of the footprint.
Well, let me let Chris Connolly address that, because he worked on.
Chris Connolly, Assistant City Attorney.
And I apologize for asking these questions. I just got this agreement yesterday, and I read it and replied back right away, and I just found out, I got some answers around noon today. So I'm kind of disappointed that it took this long to get it to us, because I wish I would have had more chance to talk with you behind the scenes, but so I'm just asking my questions now.
That's fine. That is a reference to the public right-of-ways that are within the footprint. So we're not talking about anything outside of the footprint.
Okay?
But obviously, there are city streets within the area, and that's what it's a reference to.
Okay, explain then, what does adjacent park property mean?
Well, we have the Harris Park, which is adjacent to it. I guess I'm not sure if there's other park property as such that's adjacent to the footprint area, but that's one, that's what.
What about
would
the
be
property
included.
out by, say, Oak Lake?
Yeah, that's right. That would be included in the JPA footprint area. So that would be part of it. And I don't know the boundaries for the park out there, but.
But
that
what
would
you're
be included.
saying is this endowment is only going to be used for property within the footprint, nothing, not 1 foot outside the footprint?
That is correct.
And no monies are gonna be used for any maintenance, any repairs, any replacements, anything outside?
Correct. It's only for JPA property.
In that footprint down,
in the footprint that is in Exhibits A and B, which are attached.
okay, because I think the language here, adjacent park property, kind of makes me question, is that adjacent to me means not necessarily in, it means
Next
it
to.
could be next to.
I understand, but there is no, I guess we would have to locate adjacent right-of-way, public right-of-way, but there isn't going to be that much next to it.
I mean,
don't
can't we just say, can't we scratch and adjacent park property and say, just including the public right-of-way within the West Haymarket JPA project area? And scratch adjacent park property within? Or scratch and adjacent park property?
We probably could. Yeah, I can't think of any reason why that it would negatively affect anything if we did.
Again,
that.
I'm not trying to be difficult, but I think we have a duty here using JPA funds. I think we've got a duty here to make sure that they are used for truly repair, replacement, and so on of for JPA property
Right.
and JPA buildings and things that we did not necessarily used for things outside of, which could be interpreted to include adjacent property.
Yeah, and I think the adjacent is too adjacent to the right-of-way, but having said that, if we just take out adjacent, I think what it says then is the public right-of-way and park property
Okay, yeah,
within the project area.
yeah,
And
that's
it's
fine.
pretty clear.
Okay,
And I think that's, more of a Scrivener's change.
Yeah.
So I'm not, and we might want to call the,
I was going to say, what I would suggest is I think we can go ahead and make that change, and I don't know that we have significant representation here to agree to that, but I think that's going to be agreeable to the foundation.
that was certainly the intent when this was negotiated.
Correct.
okay.
That's
All
good.
right. All right, at this point, I think we're back to additional public comment, if there is any.
Jen Kinsey with Watchdogs. So this money is going to be lumped with other funds that the Haymarket has, or will it be at a separate line item?
It will be a separate endowment within the foundation.
Okay, so I assume that they will use it as an investment purpose?
They will invest it, and any returns on that investment will go into and build the endowment.
Okay, and what kind of instruments do they invest in?
I don't know that I can speak to that with any specificity. That would be, part of the agreement is they will invest it in a fiscally prudent manner.
Which is like savings, or is it
Well,
like
it'll be-
stocks?
I imagine it will be a mixture of instruments, including equities and bonds.
And bonds?
And bonds.
That the city approves? It'll be
Well,
the same?
The annual report from the foundation will come back before this body for approval on an annual basis.
On how it's being used?
On how it's being used, but part of entering into this agreement is the trust that this board would express for the foundation for their ability to invest it in a fiscally prudent manner. This is not their only endowment. They've got
Right.
a significant amount of funds that they've invested for the benefit of the citizens of Lincoln.
But as far as you know, it won't be in any other thing than they have had used in the past? No other instruments that they haven't used in the past?
No, I
or
think
have
that they'll
used?
be invested just like they do all of their other
All
funds that are
others.
invested for endowment purposes. When you do that for endowment purposes, you've got a longer time frame, so that changes your investment mix.
Right.
Got a greater fiduciary duty too.
What was that?
I say they've got a greater fiduciary duty when they're acting in this capacity managing funds. They've got a duty to not, to follow best practices and things like that to make sure that the corpus is preserved.
Okay. So we'd have a report then next year about how the money is.
Yes, there'll be an annual report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Is there further public comment? All right. Seeing none, Jeff, why don't you stay up here? I want to be sure this is being.
Good luck on this one.
What's that?
I said, good luck on this, figuring out procedurally how this is all gonna work.
Yeah. No, I think we're all right. We got the two amendments that you want.
Got more attorneys than people today.
And, all right, so we have WH 1617, and we can consider that before us now. So the motion should be a motion to adopt amendment number 1.
Yes.
And then we
Okay.
make the changes off of that one, I think, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so moved.
Okay.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt amendment number 1. Motion to amend number 1. Any further discussion? Call the roll.
Whitler,
Yes?
Eskridge.
Yes.
Claire.
Yes.
Okay, so that has been adopted. Tim, I don't know if you want to make the motion or you want me to make the motion, but I know that one thing you were concerned about, looking at the agreement that is now before us, is on page 2, towards the end of number 1, the last sentence, which starts out, the WHJPA and the mayor of the city of Lincoln shall approve, da-da-da-da-da. I think the motion would be, if I understand you correctly, to strike the words "and the mayor of the city of Lincoln."
Yes.
Okay.
And the-
So moved?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks for your procedural.
Okay, moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? I think that was, I would say for myself, I think that's a good catch, and we will come to a motion also on the fund statement later, so that the entire JPA will have an opportunity to speak to that.
And then I want to make the other change relative to paragraph 1 by scratching the word adjacent.
Adjacent.
Okay, you want to do that as part of this
Can we do that
motion
all
or
on
separate?
this-
I
Can we do that all
think
on
you
the
can,
same one?
as long as our reporter has that clearly done, we can make it as one amendment.
Yep.
Okay,
So then strike the word adjacent in the last line, so that sentence would instead read, including the public right-of-way and park property within the West Haymarket JPA project area, right?
Yes.
okay. So, let's accept that as part 2 of the motion, and then just to be clear, is there a motion to approve? Let's see what our counselors are conversing on here
And
before we
adjacent.
move forward.
Oh, I think can you show me where it's at?
It's also in paragraph 2.
Yeah, but I didn't see it in paragraph 1. I was looking at paragraph 2. Oh, okay. Thank you. Just so we're clear on the record, adjacent is used twice. Once the last line in paragraph 1 on page 1, and then on page 2, paragraph 2, midway down, both times it's used to modify park property. And so for consistency's sake, I think the amendment should strike both.
Okay.
Okay.
And can we consider that
Yes,
part of your original suggestion?
yes.
Okay. So with that 2-part suggestion, is there a motion to adopt that to the main motion?
Sure.
So moved,
Second.
seconded. Is there further discussion now that we've
did
all
very well.
completely confused?
You did very well.
Thank you. All right, if not, call the roll.
Whitler,
Yes.
Eskridge.
Yes.
Claire.
Yes.
Motion is adopted. Now we're back to the main motion, I believe. Are there any further amendments at this point? If not, is there a motion to adopt 1617 as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Okay, call the roll.
Beitler,
Yes?
Eskridge.
Yes.
Claire.
Yes.
Okay, the motion is adopted. Agenda item number 8, WH 1618, a resolution relating to a consultant agreement. And Adam's going to discuss that with us.
Adam Hobelheinrich with PC Sports and Project Control. Item 8 is renewal or a additional consultant agreement with PC Sports, Project Control Sports, for the year or for 2017. What we've looked at based on what we've kind of sat down and figured out for scope and what the JPA needs. We kind of listed it out in our scope of work, but that generally includes helping out with the development areas, closing out contracts that we've completed in the last year, warranty management, some additional projects we'll be looking at this year, including some parking operations adjustments we're going to be doing in the West Haymarket. And generally, as opposed to other years, in an effort to help you guys again with the budget, we've gone to an hourly basis, reduced the overall not to exceed, so that way the JPA pays for what we do, and we think that's fair not only to us but to you guys, and want to go towards that way. The not to exceed is for the year is $120,000. It's down significantly from last year's monthly lump sum or lump sum payment and overall lump sum. So I guess I open it up to any questions. Everything's similar to other contracts we've had with the JPA over the last few years. And
Questions, Carl?
You still have sports in there, PC Sports.
we do.
So should your contract be tied to our basketball team's performances?
Sporting proposition
I
indeed.
wish we would have met like 3 weeks ago, if that's.
Yeah. Thanks for what you're doing. It's important.
Yeah, I was just going to echo what Carl said about your performance, not about. But honestly, we could not have gotten this far along in the project without the great work that you and Paul and your team did, and we really appreciate that work. It was. So I think some people could look and say, "Gosh, you're spending a lot of money to keep this going," but if penny wise, pound foolish, if we don't do it. And so I think you've done a great job, and look forward to continuing to work with you.
As on behalf of our team and myself, we really appreciate that, and I think we've really taken over the years. I can speak for myself and a lot of the team. We've really taken ownership in helping the JPA out and being stewards of the public's money. So,
Although it would be my natural inclination, I'm not going to add to your compliments, Adam, for fear you'll become too heady about all this. But you have done great work. Appreciate it. Okay, is there public comment on this contract?
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs. We object to this resolution and ask that it be removed from the agenda. PC Sports has earned over millions of dollars with no competitive bid. We found that there weren't any illegalities and perhaps any ethic issues. But in our research, we found that money was donated on 3/23/11 to the mayor's campaign before the development even started by the husband of the owner of PC Sports, Paula Ports. We could find no record of Chris Ports living in Ashland, Nebraska at that time, and that he was living with Ms. Ports in Des Moines. We feel this is highly lacking in transparency, efficiency, and accountability. and that it is the poor use of the taxpayers' money. Unfortunately, Nebraska has no pay-for-play law, which is not in the best interest of Nebraskans or taxpayers, but that's more for the legislature. But we do want the public to know that has been this connection, and that we do not find it appropriate use of the taxpayers' money.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Is there further public comment? Seeing none, is there a motion with regard to WH 1618?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, call the roll.
Beitler,
Yes.
Eskridge.
Yes.
Claire.
Yes.
The resolution is passed. Agenda item number 9, authorizing the chair to execute a postage meter rental agreement.
I'd like to introduce Bob Wall of the city, county, and the West Haymarket JPA purchasing agent, and he'll describe why we need to go through this multi-year agreement and get your approval.
This is your first appearance.
It is. and
Oh,
Don
we're a
had to
pretty
catch me in the
ferocious
hall.
group, so be cautious here.
All right. What this is there is a state contract and a national cooperative contract with Neopost and Claritas for postage machines. And we believe that based on the requests that we received from the arena, that this would be the best option for them and get the best pricing, which was competitively bid, and to move forward with this lease option for the arena.
Okay, are there questions about? Seeing none, thank you very much.
thank
Is
you.
there public comment on this particular item? Seeing none, is there a motion on WH 1619?
So moved.
Jeff?
Been moved and seconded that we adopt the resolution. Is there further discussion?
Wait, I'm not seconding. I want Jeff to.
Yeah, as I understand it, Member Claire has a conflict due to his law firm representing the merchant in this case. And so this is an item that can be adopted by a 2-0 vote.
Apologize.
And so you just need to have someone else second it.
Okay.
And vote.
Okay. With that understanding then, is there,
You need to second it, I think.
I need to second it, all right, I'll second the adoption of the resolution. Now, is there further discussion?
No.
Okay. Call the roll.
Beitler,
Yes.
Eskridge.
Yes.
Claire.
Abstain.
Or, that's right.
Okay, the motion is adopted. Agenda items number 10 and 11 are simply the follow-ups to the endowment agreement resolution earlier. So we'll take agenda item number 10 first, WH 1620, the motion to approve the fund statement. And Jeff's going to introduce that.
Yeah, this is just a statement of the purpose of the fund. I don't know that I would have anything to bring to your attention other than the fact that the term adjacent is also in here, so for consistency's sake, you may want to amend it and take that out as well.
In one place or two places?
Just to one place, I believe.
Just the one place, all right.
Otherwise, I would answer any questions that I could.
Where is it, Jeff?
Up
Near
in
the end?
top, first paragraph, about a
Oh.
third.
Okay,
It's that same language, and so we take adjacent,
Adjacent.
scratch it.
Yep, out of Parkland.
okay, so the motion is to strike adjacent in the paragraph described as general description / use as it appears before the words park property.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
And you're making that motion? Right.
Sure.
Okay.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Let me see, where are we? I guess I'm sorry, I'm out of order a little bit. I think it's public comment time, isn't it? Is there any public comment? All right, seeing none, then the main motion is to adopt WH 1620, and Regent Claire wishes to amend the main resolution to strike the word adjacent in the paragraph described, headed general description / use, as it appears before park property. And
Correct.
you move that
Seconded.
amendment? Moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Call the roll.
Beitler,
Yes?
Eskridge.
Yes.
Claire.
Yes.
Okay, so we're back to the main fund statement resolution. Is there a motion to adopt?
So move.
Been
Second.
moved and seconded. Further discussion? Call the roll.
Beitler,
Yes,
Eskridge.
Yes.
Claire.
Yes.
the resolution is adopted. And we'll move to agenda item number 11, which is the final of the 3 resolutions relating to the one item. Don?
Yes, as a result of the actions you've taken, we need to amend the operating budget and actually the program budget. As far as the operating budget, we need to move $2 million from the West Haymarket JPA surplus to a new line item called the Lincoln Parks and Rec Foundation Endowment. That will allow us to write the check, basically. And then if there's any questions with respect to that, then the next one I'll go through the amendments of where we're dealing with the program budget.
Okay. That's a broader discussion.
Yes.
Right, okay. All right, so is there public comment on WH 1621, agenda item 11?
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs. So this is a new item, the JPA surplus fund.
Yeah, we've always had the surplus fund. That is the excess money that we've collected goes into the surplus fund, and we will be taking $2 million and transferring it to this line item called the Parks Foundation. And Mark, do you want to come up and make sure that I don't stumble on my explanation here?
Lycum, City Finance. Like Don said, we're just taking $2 million from surplus, and we're moving it to the Parks and Rec Foundation endowment line item. That's so we can make the payment. The surplus fund is, like Don said, it's money we've accumulated that hasn't been applied somewhere else. Our first money is always the first thing we apply to is debt service. So once we've covered debt service for a year, then we move down, we cover operation and maintenance fund, which covers our operational increment. And after that, we have to make sure that we have depreciation and replacement fund covered, and that's essentially that's 2% of what the cost of the arena is, and that's to cover depreciation and replacement of the arena, and that's $3.7 million. And then after that, the remaining monies we collect in a year go into the surplus fund, and that can be used for many purposes. And that's where we're taking this money from.
And the surplus account has accumulated a significant amount of cash as we need to, as we move towards that point in time when we're going to ramp up our debt service. So we probably have, what, 25?
Yeah, we have in excess of $20 million in surplus right now.
29 million?
In excess of 20 million. I'm not exactly sure what that number
Okay.
is.
Our audit report that comes out next month will have the exact amount.
So that's from selling these boxes and what else?
Occupation tax primarily.
Okay,
And then,
that's 13 million at this time.
it's a little more than that at this point. Isn't it around 15?
15 million on an annual basis.
15?
Yeah, yeah.
So in 3 years, when you have to pay your principal and interest, what happens?
We expect to cover that. We're going to be generating annual surpluses for for the next several years up until that time, at which time we're expecting to be at a break-even point on a cash flow on a yearly basis, but we will have accumulated a significant balance in this surplus account to make sure that we can comfortably clear that hurdle. And then as that occupation tax increments up each year, we will, then we'll accumulate additional surpluses.
Okay. And the federal subsidy of debt payments, is that like when they sent out money from the feds to help cities and so forth?
The city issued $200 million of Build America bonds back when this was being built, and part of this was an incentive for people to complete infrastructure programs, as you recall, during the height of the recession or the recession. And so it was an opportunity for us to issue $200 million of debt at a very, very, extremely low rate. That's the reason that we're where we're at with respect to our debt payments, is because of that program and significantly reducing our cost of borrowing.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Is there other public comment? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt WH 1621?
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Call the roll.
Beitler,
Yes.
Eskridge, Claire.
Yes.
Resolution's been adopted. Agenda item number 12, WH 1622, resolution to amend Phase 1 of the program budget. Don Hers.
Okay, there's a single page on the program budget, and this is to address really three items. One is to move $2,120,000 from the infrastructure contingency and allocate that, to the operating budget for the $2 million, and then increase the general conditions by $120,000 for the PC Sports contract that was just approved. And then there's an adjustment moving money from dirt moving to environmental to cover that. I think I referenced before that we had an overage there and have specific questions about that. I think if Adam is still here, he may be able to address that. But this is to finalize the impact of those two items, the $2 million coming out of contingency, and to add the $120,000 to the general coordination of the project.
Any questions of Don?
Why are we using those funds? Or is that consistent? Is that where the payment came from when we paid PC Sports throughout, was from that area?
I believe that's correct.
It is from that area?
Yep.
How did we account for it before? Did we take a full annual amount or guesstimate what we thought we were gonna pay them and put it aside? I'm not disputing the contract with PC Sports. I'm just trying to make sure that we're consistent on our accounting and bookkeeping.
Well, as good prudent budget managers, we always budgeted for our contract every single year. And the thing we're facing now is all of our project savings, which obviously there's a significant chunk of them, have been put into contingency. So it's a matter of, okay, we need another year to close some of these issues out. We need to move some back out of the contingency. So that's kind of the,
That's right.
we almost got a little overzealous with putting it in contingency, I guess. is the-
Okay, as long as we're being consistent, I got you. That's
You
good.
remember that, I
Yep.
think at the previous one, we moved money into contingency, and this is
Yep, okay,
covering that.
sorry about that.
Carl?
Probably a question for Adam. The dirt work portion, can you talk a little bit about that and the overage there and the condition that leaves us in?
Just gotta make sure I understand what So we moved it out of environmental and into dirt moving?
Dirt moving into environmental.
I might be able to answer
Yeah.
that question. What we did on the HIS contract that was on Alter South, that project was paid from dirt moving, but a portion of those costs were environmental costs. And so we transferred this 165 from dirt moving to environmental because we got EPA grant money to cover that amount of expenses. So,
Okay.
and that grant money came in the environmental line item. So this is just matching the EPA money that came in to the expenditures. So that's kind of what we're doing to clean that up.
When we did the resolution for the HIS contract, it was read as such that it needed to come out of the dirt moving budget item, but yes, there was environmental items, so, yeah, the EPA funds, so it's kinda how it was paid. But the environmental chunk of that project hasn't changed, and actually, we will be bringing forth a deductive change order either February or March for that contract.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Is there public comment on this item? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt WH 1622?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Further comment? Call the roll.
Eitler,
Yes?
Eskridge.
Yes.
Claire.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted. Agenda item number 13, Resolution 17-1, to approve a purchase agreement relating to a piece of property. And fine young lawyer from our.
Yeah,
law
one more of
office,
us
Tim,
today. Tim C. from the
tell
City
us
Law,
about this.
City Law Department. In 2012, the JPA passed a resolution, Resolution WH 410, in which it authorized the chairperson to sell property that had been purchased from the railroad and then the adjacent vacated 7th Street right-of-way. That was to be sold for the purpose of the Lumberworks parking garage and for any liner building that would come along as part of that project. The statement in the resolution at that time was that it would be sold at fair market value. The chairperson was authorized to execute any necessary documents to make that conveyance come true. Obviously, a little bit of time has passed since 2012, and so what you have before you is a resolution that simply sets the fair market value for that property. There are ongoing negotiations in place to make that development happen, and an appraisal was done of the property considering both, I think, 13 comparable sales and then some unique characteristics that are associated with that site. The appraiser came up with the value of $25 per square foot being a reasonable number, and that's the number I think that's included in the resolution before you. And so with that, we would ask you to approve that, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Other questions? Thank you, Tim.
So this is where the grocery store is gonna go?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and so, we are selling it at the 20, I think it's $25 a foot? Is that what I
Correct.
saw?
Correct.
And pardon? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, and it's for that strip, where the grocery store is going there?
Yeah, I can show you a map of what the,
And then a little bit probably to the west and to the north?
yeah, let me see if I can. Did that come up? Okay. So here you have O Street, here's Canopy Street. This line right here is the former edge of the 7th Street right-of-way. This line here is Canopy Street right-of-way. So this was the part of the railroad property that was purchased, and then this is the vacated 7th Street right-of-way up here. And then the liner building will go in this area, and then out into this area as well.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions of Tim? Thank you,
Thank you.
Tim. Is there public comment on 17-1?
What's the address of that besides the legal description?
Jane, just for the record, identify yourself,
Oh.
please.
Jane Kinsey with Watchdogs.
Ms. Kinsey, I don't have a direct address for you, but I can tell you that I can show you on the map again that this is Canopy Street here. This is N Street over here. The parking garage is here. O Street is where the Harris Overpass is, so this is just south of the Harris Overpass. This is the Lumberworks parking garage here.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah. Who's buying it?
We're in negotiations with the developer on that, and probably should just leave it at that.
Okay.
Thank you, Jane. Is there any further public comment? Seeing none, is there a motion with regard to WH 17-1 to approve?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Beitler,
Yes?
Eskridge.
Yes.
Claire.
Yes.
The resolution is adopted. Agenda item number 14, the next meeting date will be, without objection, February 23rd, 2017, at 2:30 PM in the Bill Luxford studio, right here in this building. Is that agreeable to you, gentlemen?
Let me check.
Okay.
Works for me.
Pardon me?
Works for me.
Works for you? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. Call the roll.
Beitler,
Yes,
Eskridge.
Yes.
Claire.
Yes.
we are adjourned.